Welcome to On Leadership, a midweek podcast from HTBB. We believe leadership is a posture, not a position, and in the same way postures can be improved, leaders can grow. We want to encourage you to keep going and to equip you with practical ways to grow as a leader. Thanks for tuning in to On Leadership.
Hi, welcome to this episode of On Leadership. My name is FENG. I am the youth pastor here at Holy Trinity Bukit Bintang, and this is PX. PX is one of our youth leaders here at HTBB Youth. And today we are very honored to have Dan Blythe. Dan is the Global Alpha Youth Director, and we're so good to have you here. PX, why don't you start us off with the questions today?
Yeah, so Dan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience working with youth.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to spend some time with you guys. I want to learn from you guys as much, so please don't think this is you guys interviewing me, right? My experience working with youth, I started as a youth leader when I was 21 years old. I'm 37 now. So there would be millennials in there, Gen Z, and now starting to work with sort of Gen Alpha. And when I've worked with young people, there's been so many different surprises. And the surprises are just how amazing young people are. I think sometimes people just read the media and the magazines and they hear a lot of negativity about young people. But when you just sit and listen to them and learn from them and hear their experiences and some of their worldviews and perspectives and some of the struggles that they've actually pulled through, it's so encouraging and inspiring just to hear what's been happening in their lives.
And that's really interesting. So what kind of surprised you the most about working with youth and Gen Z?
Yeah, over the years, I've been really surprised, I think, by their creativity. Actually, Gen Z are called super creatives. I don't know if you've heard that term. You are a super creative.
Oh, thank you very much.
And, because of course you've gone through your teenage years, you've got your smartphone, you can download an app, you can make a video, photo, you can go on YouTube, get a tutorial, and you can just create so well and so fast. And so I think I've been really surprised just by how well this generation can create. And I love it because when they create, they put their heart, soul, passion into it. And so it doesn't look like they've just created something because they had to. They've created something because they really want to. And I love seeing pieces of art and stuff that they've created just because they love it.
Well, if I may, can I backtrack a little bit and ask you, why did you choose to serve in the youth ministry and also with the youth and Gen Zs?
Yeah. So when I was 11 years old, my mum and dad got divorced, and I grew up in a loving home, and neither of them were Christian at the time. And then when they got divorced, they separately encountered Jesus and became Christians. They married new partners who both happened to be Christians. So from the ages of 12, I was getting taken to church every weekend, whether I was with my dad or whether I was with my mum. And I was aware that God was real because I could see the transformation in their life. But all I heard was the rules. You can't do this and you can't do that. Thou shalt not rather than thou shalt. And so for me, I didn't really want a relationship with Jesus or with God. And when I was in the churches of my parents, they didn't really have any youth ministry. They had some great people, but there was nothing really for someone like myself. And so when I did become a Christian, age 18, when everything I'd heard before finally just came to life and I understood what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus, I made a decision then that whatever I was going to do in my life, I didn't mind. But if I could just help one young person encounter God's grace in their teenage years, then that's what I wanted to give my life to.
Interesting. PX, do you have any questions about this?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to follow up because, you mentioned that the preconceived notion that you had was that church had rules.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the relationship with Gen Z and rules now, especially when there are a lot of popular hashtags like break the system is broken. What do you think Gen Z could do with that?
Oh, I love what they're doing with that. And I think there's a lot of boundaries and rules in place around the world which kind of need to be challenged and maybe not broken. Maybe we just challenge them so that we can find out why they're there, because it's not until you challenge do you really find the purpose behind something. So I think what they're doing is good. When it comes to the Bible, I always thought it was rules because I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. So for me it was what you call behavior modification. My parents wanted me just to be a nice person, right? Like Jesus. But the thing is, because I hadn't encountered Jesus, it was just all man-made. It was only until I encountered Jesus, got full of the Holy Spirit, then I realized that transformation is by the power of the Holy Spirit. It's not by us. So I don't mind the rules and the boundaries in the Bible now, because for me, it's enabled me to live my best life, the healthiest life to the full. I love football. I don't know if you guys, do you like English football?
Arsenal.
Manchester United.
Oh, okay, brilliant. I'm Chelsea, so yeah.
So glad we're still sitting on the same table.
Yeah. But when it comes to football, I love playing football. But you've got a referee, you got lines, you got goals. There's rules, and the rules there aren't to make it a bad experience for all the players. The rules are there so that they can enjoy a game to the full. And what I realise now is just the boundaries and the rules that are in the Bible aren't there to hurt us, but they're actually there to help us.
Yeah, interesting. You spoke a little bit about Gen Z's PX. You did as well. I'm just wondering. Well, Gen Zs today, they are associated with, a few notions like, they suffer with anxiety, risk aversion, and authenticity is really important to them. Would you like to share with us your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's break those three down. So anxiety, the mental health epidemic is, it actually really, I don't know, I can't explain it. Like, it weighs heavily on my heart. Like, I wish there was just something that could happen overnight so that young people didn't have to suffer with this. But the best thing we can do with anxiety is just allow it to become a new normal. Like if you broke your leg, you'd go to the doctor and you'd be okay with talking about it. We need to make sure that it's okay for young people to talk about mental health. And there's lots of reasons why mental health is where it is today. But one of the things that it's massively linked to is the digital revolution and social media. We were not made to live life constantly trying to get the affirmation from thousands of people across the world. Like, we're made for community where people know us personally, and I mean that's a whole conversation for another time. But yeah, anxiety is where it's at, and it's devastating, and we have to make sure we keep praying. The second thing you said is risk aversion. There's a massive fear of failure. And, psychologists will say there's a few different reasons for this. For a generation that has maybe grown up where they say everybody's a winner, you get a participation trophy, that kind of thing. It's like, even though that's nice for everyone, if you don't cope with loss and learn how to cope with loss, then you live your life with a massive fear of failure. And that could be one of the things that have played into it. But for whatever reason, again, we need to make sure that we're creating spaces for young people to fail and let them know that it's okay to fail, and even normalizing failing. Right. It's just, if you're going to do anything in life, the way you do it is you try, you fail, you try, you fail. If you want to fly a plane, you have flight simulators, you practice, you crash it, you crash it, you crash it, until one day you fly without people, then one day you fly with people. It takes 7 years to be a pilot where you can fly it with people. And for some reason, we just don't allow that space with young people. So there's a fear of failure. And then the third thing that you said was authenticity. Yeah. And I think this is one of the most beautiful things about this generation, that they love authenticity. And when they see fake, when they see superficial, they call it out, and they are kind of repelled by it. And Jesus and the Bible constantly encourages us to be who God has called us to be our true selves, to not wear masks. And I think that this generation can really see what authenticity is. And because of that, brands and companies are changing everything that they do to try and be more authentic, to reach this generation. And so I think for us as Christians and as the church, we should always have been on the front line of authenticity. For us, it shouldn't be now we should be authentic because Gen Z want us to be. It should have always been who we are. And when brands are doing all of this to make profit off a generation, ultimately, we need to make sure that we are our authentic selves so that we can serve this generation well and give our best for them.
Yeah, it's really so interesting that you mentioned that as well. And serving in the youth ministry, we realized that, authenticity means also to be, playing with them, just not just being their pastors, but also as their friends. And we realized that when we have sports events and we are just playing with them and we get rough and tough with them, they actually like it. And they enjoy that more than sitting in a classroom learning about the Word of God. Of course, that is really important, but also they value being outside, playing sports together with us, and we realize that helps us draw closer to them as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think really the relational aspect, right, really matters. I think from what we see in youth ministry these days, it's really building that relationship with them before they're willing to be susceptible to us and be open. Especially, I think with the authenticity, they want to make sure that we're the real deal. Yeah. But I guess my question would be then, how do we leverage social media and other platforms that maybe did not exist 15 years ago?
Yeah.
And how can we use that to connect with them?
Yeah, such a great question. It's really hard I think, to be authentic on social media, because all you're ever doing is posting your highlights, right? And even if you do post like your non-highlights, the hard moments, it kind of sends out a message that you need people's help when really, you might not need people's help. So, for example, like I'll post nice smiley pictures of me and my kids. Like, you post about what you're passionate about. If you ever want to know what someone cares about, just look at their social media. So I post a lot of pictures of me and my family, my kids, because they're probably what I'm most passionate about. But I don't post them crying. I don't post, me having sleepless nights. I don't post the arguments with my wife when we're struggling, purely because, I'm not. If I did that, it'd be like I'm trying to get everyone to help me, where really we've got a support circle. So I don't need to put that on social media. So what I'm trying to say is, the hard thing with social media is, because it's just your highlights, it doesn't actually give out a good representation of authenticity, because it doesn't show your true life. It just shows parts. So I think what we can do with social media is post something, I always think, which is encouraging. Post something which doesn't shine a light on you, but shines a light on others. And then when you post, just always share that this is just my highlights, that this is just a part of my life, and try and make it as real and authentic as you can, knowing that sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. What's been your experience, PX? Because I know you're 22. Do you remember what age you started on social media?
Yeah, so I grew up with fairly strict parents, and I was not actually allowed to get social media until I was 18. But I secretly did so, I guess, as the rebellious teenager that I once was, hopefully, at 13. And what Instagram used to be at that time was like the really bad filters with the chunky frames. It was a very very different generation. And what we're seeing now with youth is that it's like very filtered. It's very like dumped from the month before or whatever. What we're seeing is it's not really as authentic. It wasn't just like, oh, this is my lunch today. And so I guess as a church, we're trying to figure out like, how do we reconcile these two, right? Like, we want them to feel comfortable that what we're showing is not going to embarrass them in front of their friends, but also what we're showing them is a true reflection of their own personality and a reflection of God.
Love that. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks for sharing that, PX. And just wondering, in with Gen Zs, I know you work a lot with Gen Zs, especially with Alpha. Just wondering, data shows that they struggle more. We covered a little bit about mental health and anxiety. They struggle more on dating as well. They date a little less, and they struggle with loneliness. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. It's so weird, isn't it, that they're the most connected generation, like more connections and interactions than ever before in history, yet more lonely than ever before. And I think that's exactly the problem, is that we've kind of, the time that we would have invested into a handful, a small circle, we've invested into, 100 online, and we get our sense of confidence from like that affirmation from people. And it's, even myself, like, I have to ask myself, why, when I post something, do I care about how many likes and how many comments it gets from people that I'm not even doing life with, that I don't even know, but for some reason that is important, whereas if I just sent a text message or a photo to 5 of my friends saying, hey, look, it's Knox's birthday today, who's my son, like, look at this, and they'd be all genuinely celebrating with me, and they're part of his life. And so I think it's something where we all just need to, when we can, press pause and just think about, if we are feeling lonely, are there some reasons why we might be feeling like this? First of all, I'd always, ask a question like, have you spent time with God? And as basic as that sounds, like, if you're not getting your daily time in with God, of course, there's, you're going to be struggling in certain areas, of life. And so I think we got to be disciplined with our time with Him. And then the second thing, I'd be like checking your circle, and I'd be like, how much time are you spending face to face with a circle of people that love you compared to 100 people who don't even know you? And then, when it comes to like loneliness, I think sometimes, depending on, what's causing the pain of loneliness, you need to be proactive, and you need to have the confidence and the courage just to like reach out to somebody. And I know this is the hardest thing, because when you feel lonely, the last thing you want to do is reach out to someone saying, can we go for a coffee? Can we hang? And I know there's been moments in my life and moments with my wife and some people close to us. And we're just like, I don't feel like we've got the friends that we'd hoped for. And then we were talking, we were like, well, have we reached out to anyone like in the last couple of weeks? Have we invited anyone over? Have we asked anyone for coffee? And we realized No, we haven't. So it's funny, we were complaining about this sense of loneliness, but we hadn't done anything ourselves to change it. So I'd say God first, look at your circle, and then thirdly, don't wait for everybody to invite you to a place. You be proactive and like actually invite someone, you know, for coffee, to hang, and like be present.
Yeah, you mentioned God first, and in the Bible it always says that, you know, God is the good father. In this generation, we realize that some of our youths, they are going through parents' divorce, and it's really hard for them to relate that, you know, God is a good father. So how do we present God to this generation?
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing question. I think we could do a whole podcast on that in itself. But I think first of all, like if you've got an understanding of God's love, and UPX, you've got an understanding of God's love, then the best thing you can do is just demonstrate to them, and that might be through words, but I think action is really what they're looking for. You know, they don't just want to hear about God's love; they want to see God's love. So if you've encountered the Father's love, like, how can you show it to the young people in your world? And like how you show it to the young people in your world might be different to how I would in my local church. You know, for them it might, for me and the young people that I'm with, it might be, I don't know, just spending some time playing Xbox with them. For others it might be me taking them out and we get coffee, or Nando's, which is like a chicken shop in London, which is one of my favourite.
We have that here too.
Oh, you got Nando's here? Oh, amazing. Oh, I wish you'd told me that earlier. But yeah, I think the question in itself, like how do we demonstrate the love of the Father, is something that we should always be thinking about. Like, how do we display our amazing Father's love? Because I know as an actual physical father with my own son, I'm displaying my love to my two boys loads of different ways, loads of different times, and even I'm displaying my love in my discipline to them, and I'm displaying my love in my words of affirmation and encouragement to them. And we need to help young people understand that the love of the Father doesn't just mean that you get good things all the time. It actually means that the loving Heavenly Father is going to help them grow and develop, which involves actually discipline and allowing them to go through some things which are going to help them to grow stronger, to build some resilience, so that actually they can step into the things that He has for them.
That's so cool. Yeah, really interesting point. And I mean, you're here for the Alpha Regional Gathering, and you talked about how you looked at your son. Would you like to tell that story again about, you know, bringing your son for a vaccination?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we were talking just about you know, why God allows us to go through, you know, hard situations. And I think when we get to heaven, like, we're all going to have a lot of questions. We're all going to say, God, what about this and what about that? You know, I don't think our Heavenly Father ever wants us to go through pain. I don't think He enjoys that one bit, and in fact I think it breaks His heart to see us suffering. But sometimes, because He sees from a different perspective, He allows us to go through some things to build some strength. And in Christianity, sometimes we think the idea is that if God is with us, then we never experience pain. But like, you know, if you go to the gym, you know, there's this saying that no pain, no gain, right? And so it's like you let your muscles go through a little bit of pain so that you can build the strength within the muscles. And so the example I was giving was like with my son Knox, when I remember taking him for vaccinations, and he was 6 months old, and he was looking at me in the eye as if to say, you know, you're my loving Heavenly Father, you're such a good dad, I love you. And I was looking back at him saying, oh, I love you too, son, you know. And then this random stranger, the doctor, comes over with a huge needle and just like, you know, sticks him in the arm. And I remember his eyes like bulging, kind of like looking at me as if to say, wait a minute, I thought you were my good father. You know, like, what's this about? Why are you allowing this stranger to stab me with a needle? But the thing is, because he is a baby, because he was so young, I couldn't explain it so that he doesn't get tuberculosis or hepatitis. I couldn't explain to him that I'm doing this so that his body builds up an immune system so that later on he doesn't get taken out by this disease. In fact, that if he ever does get caught, catches this disease, he will overcome it and live, you know, life to the full. Now he's a bit older, he can understand why I allowed him to go through that 5 minutes of pain so that he is alive today. And I think it's a little bit like that with God. And even when I look through my own life, there's been seasons where I've been like, why? God, why are you allowing this to happen to me? Like, why are you allowing this pain to happen? And now in hindsight, I can see it was in those times when I really just pressed into God. There was this depth that I'd never experienced in relationship with Him, which only came from that season, which has enabled me now to be able to cope with other things which are much more harder or even significant than what I experienced before.
Wow, that's so good. I really love that story, and it really reminds me every time of God's love for us, and it's really for our own good. Going back to Gen Zs and Gen Alpha, they are deemed as the fragile generation, the snowflakes generation, and but I believe that we can learn something from them as well. So, what are your thoughts on being labeled for them being labeled as a snowflake generation?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's like every generation, from like the silent generation who are aged like 74 to 95, when they were younger, they were seen but not heard. That's why they're called the silent generation. So you're like the silent generation, the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, which is my generation, now Gen Z. And it's almost like every generation, the older generation, thought the younger ones were more fragile than the ones before. And like the silent generation, ones who were like in war fighting, the language was like man up, toughen up, don't show your emotions, hold it all in, and that was really their upbringing. So of course they would have encountered similar things, but they were just told to suppress it. So here we are now, a few generations later, and we're not telling them to suppress it. In fact, what we realize is that one of the healthiest ways that you can deal with some of these things is to express it and to talk about it and to be real and honest about where you're at. So I don't think that this generation is more fragile. I just think they're dealing with the same problems that every generation has had to face, but they're dealing with it in a different way. So when people call them snowflakes, like, you're entitled, you don't show up when you say you were, you're flaky, you ghost. Ghosting is when, you text them and call them, but they don't text and call you back. You ask them sort of like, what's going on. But ultimately, it's just, they're just trying to deal with everything that's on their plate. And because they've got so much on their plate, everything that's happening online, everything that's happening offline, school, work, family, all these different things, it's a lot to manage. And so I don't think it's that they're any more fragile, and I don't think it's that they're any more flaky. I just think they're having to deal with a lot of different things that other generations didn't have to deal with. And so the best thing we can do is help them. And whenever I hear the word snowflake, which is a negative term, right? People are just having a go at this generation. I always say that only the creator can label the created. So like my medicine, only the creator of the medicine can put the label on the medicine. I've got a car, make and model on the back. Only the creator can put the label on the car. In the same way, I don't think the world can label this generation. I think only God can. And he says they're fearfully and wonderfully made. He says he's got a plan and purpose for their life. He says that they are so loved. And so I think, when I hear the word snowflakes, I'm like, well, what does God say? And I remember just thinking that actually when snowflakes move together in London, you guys wouldn't get any snowflakes here. But in London, they shut down streets and schools and shops because there's power in togetherness. And that's what I'm seeing with this generation. Like, they're moving together, they're connected on their phone so that they can shine a light on darkness and rally together and make change, not just micro change, but macro change. So there's power in togetherness. And when millions and millions of snowflakes fall together, you get what's called an avalanche. Totally changes the landscape of the land. And that's what I'm seeing this generation do. They're changing everything. Government, media, schools, university, church, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think God is fully aware, and God is really excited about what this generation is doing. And so whenever I hear snowflakes now, I always think, but look at what they're doing. They're changing everything, and I think He is, and I think He's gonna continue to use this generation in a really powerful way.
And so, you mentioned that they're leading in so many different areas. Where do you think Gen Z leadership is most distinct?
Yeah. So it's funny, when you go through the different generations, the different leadership traits, the silent generation, their leadership style was controlling. Because they're in the army, and you don't really have time for collaboration there. It's kind of like control and command and go. And then after that, the baby boomers, their leadership style was directing, like go and do. Then after that, you got Gen X, age 44 to kind of 55. They're the parents of Gen Z. Their leadership style was coordinating. So they started working with the team, which is interesting because Gen Z, your generation, love collaboration. So the parenting, it's really interesting that their leadership style has really impacted, the kids that they've raised. They're millennials, my generation. Their leadership style is guiding. So it's like they don't just tell you what to do. They'll say the way, but they'll also show the way and go the way and lead with. Now, Gen Z, their leadership style has been described as empowering. And I haven't come up with this myself. This is from McCrindle, which is a research group based in Australia. And they were saying that Gen Z are empowering leaders. So they want to give power to each other. They want to give a voice to the voiceless. They want equality. And so they've got this like superpower of empathy. And when they're on social media, you know, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but when you hear about injustice, when you hear about someone's pain and hurt online, it's like you have this natural ability to put yourself in their shoes, and your heart kind of breaks for what's going on, and you want to help them, even though you might not know them. And that's what we're kind of seeing. So their leadership style is empowering, and they want to empower the people. So for us, whatever generation we are, if we want to really help lead this generation, we have to make sure we're leading in the way that they want to be led, which is in an empowering way. So we're not controlling them, we're not just directing them, we're not even guiding them, but we're actually empowering them, giving them a sense of authority, sense of responsibility to go and fail. And we need to make sure that we're not just saying, have a go, and if you make a mistake, that's it, you're out, you're off. We're actually saying, no, go. And we know that you're going to make mistakes, and we're going to be with you the whole way.
And so how can the church play a role in doing this, in empowering Gen Z?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And I think what I see here at HTBB, and I look at your youth ministry, I think you guys are doing this so well. I think we need to make sure that we're not kind of like making all the decisions ourselves and not involving young people. I'd actually involve them in every single level. I'd involve them in the dreaming and the brainstorming. I'd involve them in the prayer meetings. I'd involve young people in like the worship team and, you know, the nights. I think any level where we can involve young people in the creative team, just get them involved. I think traditionally churches haven't done great at this, and you know, hear me, I'm definitely not having a go at the church because I'm part of my local church and I love the church, but kind of when you can travel around the world, it's kind of like the world has really changed their models and their strategies, and they really are empowering Gen Z and listening to Gen Z and involving them and collaborating with them. But the church is a little bit of a slow adopter in this. We're kind of like, no, like they're not ready, they're not experienced enough. But what we're trying to say is, yes, we know they might not be ready, we know they might not be experienced enough, but that's the whole point. We're going to give them the opportunity now so that they can grow while doing, you know, while serving, while kind of building, you know, everything together. And so I think if the church can start like not, you know, holding the mic and just saying, you know, like once you've proved yourself, then you can, you know, have a voice. If we start saying, no, like you have a voice now, we want to hear from you, and help young people design, you know, what they think is going to be a space for them to invite their friends and see young people discipled, I think that'll be really significant.
And you have some experience working with Gen Zs, I think, as Gen Z, like myself, starts entering the workforce. What are your top tips about helping them flourish? I mean, some common mistakes that maybe you've experienced or you've witnessed, and how to kind of, how to overcome that?
Yeah, such a great question. I mean, I think top tip is like listening to them. And I think, you know, before, as a youth leader for like quite a few years, you know, we'd go away and we'd plan, we'd strategize, and then we'd just roll out this plan and like just hope young people would really enjoy it. And they did. There was lots of great things. But I think now, if I was to do things differently, I'd just be spending a lot more time just sitting and listening. You know, churches aren't set up to listen to the congregation or young people. Churches are set up purely in their buildings to listen to the preacher and the pastor. And I'm just mainly talking about the services here. You know, you walk into a room, what do you see? Row after row after row after row with one microphone at the top. So it is telling them that it's all about you coming to listen to this one or two or the preaching teaching team, which is cool. We need to be able to, you know, be inspired and hear God's word so we can grow in our relationship with him. But what we also need to do is create circles and other spaces where they're not coming in to listen to us, but we're listening to them and giving space for their questions and their discussions and their problems. And so I think, you know, one of the best things we can do is look at what we do and say, like, how much time is it about them listening to us, and how much time have we got where we're listening to them, and make sure there's a really healthy balance.
Yeah, and I think that it works here, because we run Alpha here at HTBB, and we realize that is when we are gathering in circles, the discussion happens. They are vulnerable as well, and as we become vulnerable to them, they will share with us, what they're going through, their struggles, and it has helped with the growth of the youth, not just in numbers, but also seeing them step up and being comfortable and like, hey, they are ready to share their testimonies, what they're struggling with other youths as well, and it has really, really helped. And actually, ever since then, we have met in circles. Always, every single week, we meet in circles. And speaking about Alpha, we know that this Alpha Youth series, you are filming a new Alpha Youth series. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd really appreciate your prayer. As we create this kind of like new film series, the last one came out in 2017. This one's going to come out in 2024. And I really, really appreciate your prayers. In fact, everything we do, if we don't pray, then it's just kind of created in our own strength. And I don't want to create anything which is like, because of our own talent and skill. Like my heart and hope is that this is just a spirit-led piece of content which has a culture of what you've talked about, the circles of listening, and then the content. What we're doing is spending a lot more time just talking about the goodness of God, the goodness of Jesus. When we did a study, we listened to 25,000 teenagers across 27 different countries with Barna, World Vision, Biblica. Got loads of different insights from that, but one of the things we realized is that they're such an open generation. They're really open to God. They're really open to Jesus. And so what we want to do is just spend some time just thinking about like what does God look like for them, meeting them where they're at, and not just expecting them to know all the stuff that we might know about Jesus. And so what we realize is that young people want to know whether Jesus is good before they know that he's true. And now typically Alpha's been set up to show the truth, the evidence, the apologetics. Like this is all the evidence. But the evidence is great, and all of that is still going to be in there. But young people want to know first if he's good, because if Jesus is not good, they don't care whether he's true. If Jesus is exclusive, if the Bible is toxic, and if God is an angry, mean person in the sky just waiting for them to mess up, they don't want anything to do with that. And so what we need to do is just show them the true gospel that we know and have encountered, and enable them just to just see the truth, which is that he loves them so much.
Yeah, very exciting. Can you give us a little sneak peek into what to expect in the Alpha Youth series, which is going to come out next year, I believe?
Yeah, so it's you can run it in 8 weeks, so it's going to be slightly shorter. The episodes are going to be slightly shorter as well. There's going to be bits of animation in there, bringing stuff to life. We're going to have younger hosts. The hosts will be between the ages of like 18 to 23, because the idea is it's just, almost like, the younger generation, Gen Z, inviting a generation to join them as they kind of like explore these different topics together. And we're going to have voices from all over the world. It's not created in the West for the rest. It's actually going to be, it's a globe. It would, as much as we can, even though the first one will be English speaking, and then we'll do other languages. The first one will be English speaking, but it'll have a very global feel to it. And the production house that we're working with is an amazing group of people. They're called Signal Flare, and they're actually based right here in Malaysia. And so we've got an amazing team of Malaysians, creating this, and I've just been blown away by their absolute genius. So for anyone watching this or listening to this, know that Asia and Malaysia have got a significant not a significant part to play. Like, they are creating it, and I just love that here in Asia, this has almost become like the epicenter of like creativity and innovation. And I really hope that for anyone watching and listening, like, we're so blessed and grateful and thankful for what God is doing here, and know that what is happening here is having a ripple effect across the whole world. And so it's really exciting just to be here.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Just one last question then. This is a cheeky one. What's your favorite food here in Malaysia?
Do you know what? I've tasted some amazing food. I haven't had one bad meal. But today for lunch, I walked past this just this pop-up like restaurant, and it was selling Wagyu steak sticks. So steak on a stick. Like, it was just, it was amazing. She's like, would you want ribeye or do you want sirloin? I'm like, can you do both? And she's like, yeah. So she mixed it all up, and these two little sticks, and it was like 30 ringgit. which is good price, right?
Yeah,
for two.
for Wagyu, yeah.
So 15 ringgit each. I don't know what that is in pounds, but either way, like it was a win. So that's my favourite so far.
Wow, great. PX, do you have anything else to ask Dan?
No, Dan, I think we're just looking forward. I think maybe give a sneak peek as you transition from catering to Gen Zs to catering to Gen Alpha. Like, what are some changes that you might be seeing or you think you might see in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so good. Well, so if you think about Gen Alpha, they were sort of like kids during lockdown. Their parents are millennials, so already we're seeing millennials spending a lot more time with their kids. So if previous generations worked all hours of the day to earn a living for their kids, what we're seeing is millennials not work as many hours but try and give those extra hours to spending FaceTime with their kids, which is, there's no wrong or right. I'm not saying one generation did it better than the other, but it just means it's going to look different. And so their leadership style is predicted to be inspiring. Somehow, you know, with the war that's happening, with the earthquakes and death and the shootings and all the pain and the suffering around, you wouldn't expect this, but because of the hardship, apparently this generation is going to rise up with more hope, and they're going to lead in an inspiring way. So, you know, only time will tell. But yeah, again, with Generation Z, finished the English alphabet, X, Y, Z. Now they're on the Greek alphabet, Alpha, and then Generation Beta. You know, with all of that, you know, the Bible's very clear about generations. God works with the generations, and I think, you know, God is going to do something amazing. Final question from me to you two then. So if Wagyu steak sticks are my favourite food, what is your number one meal that you think I should try before I leave Malaysia?
PX, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think you've got to try nasi lemak. I don't know if you've tried that.
I haven't.
That's coconut rice with a prawn chili paste
Wow.
with some roasted peanuts and dried anchovies.
No way.
That's a Malaysian breakfast. It's really heavy.
Breakfast?
But yeah, it keeps us ready for the rest of the day. But yeah, it's a really great meal that I think you should try just before you leave.
Spicy?
Yeah, just a tad bit, but if you eat enough rice,
Yeah, I'm not very good with spice, but I'll give it a go.
For me, why have one when you can have many? So go to a mamak and order roti and rice and noodles and everything you can find on a menu that you think is interesting. Get them and eat it together with you. It's cheap and it's really good. Bring some friends as well. Actually, mamak is the best when you're actually watching English Premier League.
Really?
I do that with my friends all the time. Yeah, and they open 24/7.
Mate, 24/7. Wow. Okay, amazing.
Great. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dan. And we really look forward to the AYS as it's going to come out next year. Is it in August next year? Is that the plan?
Yeah, hopefully like August, September. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, we look forward to that. And yeah, thanks once again
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everything you guys do. I'm so inspired by you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to On Leadership. We hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, why not share it with a friend or post it on social media? Whatever platform you're listening on, don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow, and turn on your notifications to receive more great content from HTBB.